Hi. I'm continuing my read on all the works of C.S. Lewis. My plan that I am executing is in this project is to read through everything that I can get my hands on and reading it in chronological order. So I've started with the collected works of C.S. Lewis compiled by Walter Hooper. And we are at the stage in C.S. Lewis's life where he has moved from an English boarding school onto the Malvern College, where his brother went to school before him. And the stage in the letters that we're reading right now has him writing to his father and to his brother. And he is trying to conspire with his brother to get his father to pay for, I think, to pay for a trip for his older brother to come to his school and visit just before they go home after the end of their respective school terms. Terms. His older brother goes to a different school now. So anyway, I'll read a letter or two because I don't have a ton of time today. So let's see, where did we leave off? Okay, this next one is to his father. This is dated November 24th, 1913. And let's see, I don't know if the background music that I have playing is too loud, so I'll turn it down just a little bit. It says, "My dear Pappy, I am sorry to hear that you are thinking long. But as you know, there's good reason for the absence of letters, as this is the first day I have been able to write. As you say, I have a lot of things to talk about, and the first is Smoogy's half-term report." Smoogie is one of his favorite teachers or instructors there at the college. Before I get into that, though, he uses this term "thinking long," and I think it just alludes to the fact that they're separated from their father. Their father's separated from his sons, and they're just looking forward to the next time that they can be together, but they're thinking that it's a long way away. That's my interpretation. He goes on to say, "I must confess I was very disappointed in it, this Smoogie's half-term report. But I should have expected it all. For the fact of the matter is, about this Greek grammar, that I know very little indeed, and the consequence of this is that what the rest of the form are running over in sort of a casual way for the third or fourth time, I am often learning for the first time in my life. This, of course, makes it rather difficult to keep up with the running. Then again, one second. There we go. Where was I? This, of course, makes it rather difficult to keep up with the running. Then again, there are a lot of points of Greek grammar which I learnt up in furious haste at Cherbourg in the last few moments before the exam, and of course forgot again. Cherbourg is the preparatory school that he went to before he got accepted into Malvern College. These have to be faced with a half knowledge which is worse than ignorance, because it only muddles one's brain. But all of these things should come right in time. As I flatter myself, I am not cursed with an inability to grasp the elements of any reasonable object." Yeah, this point that he makes here about he just furiously shoved some information, he crammed for his exams at Cherbourg with a little bit of Greek grammar, and he's since completely forgotten it. I remember this was some advice that I got as a child of, hey, I just learned this stuff for the test, and then I don't have to remember it anymore. That's probably a great strategy if it's information that you'll never have to use again. But as Lewis is experiencing right here, it was something that he was expected to build upon. So I find this an interesting point that he makes, that these have to be faced with a half knowledge, which is worse than ignorance because it only muddles one's brain. Interesting. But all these things should come right in time. As I flatter myself, I am not cursed with an inability to grasp the elements of any reasonable subject. So he's got a little bit of healthy self-confidence there, it sounds like. As for the place and form, I was prepared for it to be poor, as the general standard of the form is rather beyond me, seeing that with the exception of the other schools, it consists of people who have filtered through to Smoogie's care just at the end of their Malvern career. However, I get on well with Smoogie, and really, that is half the battle. He's got a little bit of a G.I. Joe precognition here. You need not have been so worried about my temporary indisposition. It is only one of those trifling, although irritating chills to which I am subject in the winter months. Anyway, the worst of it is over now, as I am up in my room at the San today. The San is about the most curious place I've ever been in. I arrived here a week ago on Friday and was placed in a bed in a large and many-windowed apartment, in one corner of which a fire was cheerfully engaged and belching forth dense clouds of smoke, which rendered it well nigh impossible to see or breathe. Conquering a natural terror at once, becoming unconscious in such an atmosphere, I resigned myself to sleep that night. But not for long. I soon discovered, to my cost, that the room in which I had been deposited was directly over the kitchen. I was apprised of this fact by the musical efforts of the domestic staff, whose vigorous and unwholesome concert was prolonged far into the night. But the funniest thing about this place is the noises that one hears in the morning. I really cannot imagine what the staff do. Judging from the loud peals of laughter and the metallic clangs which strike my ears before breakfast daily, they engage in hand-to-hand combat with the fire irons. After a short period of the smoky room, I was removed to a smaller but much more comfortable chamber where I still remain. Here my only trouble is the determined quacking of a body of geese imprisoned somewhere in the neighborhood. As for your kind inquiries about the approaching natal gift, I have made up my mind that I should like the Rheingold and the Valkyries to match the Siegfried and Twilight of the Gods, which I have got. In the footnote here, it says Jack, C.S. Lewis, already had the last two parts of Wagner's Ring Cycle, Siegfried and the Twilight of the Gods, translated by Margaret Armour, with illustrations by Arthur Brackham. That was 1911 book. For Christmas, his father gave him the volume containing the first two parts, the Rheingold and the Valkyrie, published in 1910. I think, however, the purchase of the book had better be deferred until Christmas, when I can talk to my friend Carson in person. According to the footnote, his dad took the advice. I am glad to hear that W is coming down. W is Warney, Lewis's older brother, is coming down at the end of term, as it is nice traveling in comp than alone. I must stop now. How are you yourself keeping these days? Your loving son, Jack. Next letter to his father. The San, he was referring to the San. It says the sanatorium. That's where he's writing these letters from. I'm not really sure why he went there or what the sanatorium is. When I see sanatorium, it makes me connect it to sanitarium, which is like back in the day we would call, some people would call an insane asylum. That is not what the sanatorium is, I would suspect, or what these days people would call a mental health facility. Perhaps those are two very different things now. But sanatorium, I don't think is that, but I don't have here any footnotes on it. This next letter, written from the sanatorium that he just wrote about. My dear Pappy, I have advanced yet another stage and am now enjoying the privilege of being downstairs in the San. That is, instead of sitting up in my bedroom, I have been moved to a sitting room where I can look out upon the hideously ugly garden at the San. And yet there is a homely touch about this garden. It's full of laurels that will never grow because of the wind. We've seen these before, haven't we? I've been condemned by the school doctor, as soon as I go back, to join the ranks of people who do special exercises for delicate chests. Oh, okay. He had alluded before that he had been a little sick, I think, in the previous letter. So I guess the sanatorium is just a place where he goes to convalesce. I've been condemned by the school doctor, as soon as I go back, to join the ranks of people who do, quote, special exercises for delicate chests in the gym. This is a piece of sconce after your own heart, and I have no doubt that you will be more pleased to hear about it than I was. Your remarks about the sealskin, etc., strike me as being both in questionable taste and the products of a fevered imagination rather than a sane mind. But still, the human mind is so constituted that the bizarre must ever appeal more potently than the normal. which is a consolation. Congratulations on your victory at the Pattersonian Music Festival. You'll be becoming quite a noted Strandtown diner out of it if you're not careful. Talk about social functions. Talk about social functions reminds me of some wild, fantastic talk of another dance this year. And here in the footnote, it says Christmas will be here almost immediately. Albert wrote to Warney on the 9th of November, 1913. And amongst other questions that must be decided is the all important one: are we to have a dance or not? No doubt our friends expect it. To me, of course, the thing is an expensive nuisance, but I don't want you and Jax to drop out of things here. No dance, replied Warney on the 10th of October. Jack hated dancing, and years later he wrote in Surprised by Joy, chapter 3, quote, C.S. Lewis says it was the custom of the neighborhood to give parties which were really dances for adults, but to which nonetheless mere schoolboys and schoolgirls were asked. To me, these dances were a torment. How a small boy who could neither flirt nor drink should be expected to enjoy prancing about on a polished floor till the small hours of the morning is beyond my conception. So now here in 1913, a 15-year-old, approximately 15-year-old Lewis goes on to say, talking about social functions reminds me of some wild, fantastic talk of another dance this year. Don't let it spoil the Christmas holidays by a chore as colossal as it is disagreeable, and as disagreeable as it is unnecessary. No one else gives a dance on 2 consecutive years. Nip this matter in the bud, which has a bitter taste, and of which sweet will not be the flower. Do you remember this quotation? But seriously, I hope no such folly is really toward. It is quite bad enough having to attend the functions of others without adding to the nuisance of ourselves. Please convey to Aunt Annie and the other conspirators that you are determined not to hear of it. I am sure you are. For one thing, it is a considerable and uncalled for expense, and an expense of the most annoying kind, namely where you get absolutely no return for your money, unless you derive any great pleasure from hovering about among the noisy and objectionable throng who have invaded the pristine seclusion of Libero. Libero is a nickname that they give for the house, their house that their dad lives in. But I don't fancy that you do. I am certain that I don't. That's funny. He spends that entire paragraph where he could have just said, "Please don't have the dance," but he makes the best case that he can for it, apparently. One good thing is that there are only 3 more weeks or so this term. I suppose W will have both tickets when it comes to traveling. Is it next Tuesday or Tuesday after that his exam comes off? As to your remarks about the school San, in spite of smoky chimneys and villainous domestic staff, there are a good many worse places to spend a few weeks of a long winter term. There are plenty of books and fires, and I always derive a certain savage pleasure in sitting with my feet on the fender, watching through the window a body of my unfortunate fellow beings setting off for a run across that cold, dismal golf links that always reminds me of the moorland in Locksley Hall. Talking about Locksley Hall, I have discovered a tattered copy of Tennyson's works here, buried among the sixpenny novels and illustrated weeklies, with which I have spent a few enjoyable afternoons reading In Memoriam and Some Things That One Ought to Know. Your loving son, Jack. Footnote on the 2 things that he covered there. He mentioned Tennyson, that's Alfred Lord Tennyson, and Locksley Hall is a work by Tennyson published in 1842. And In Memoriam is a work, In Memoriam AHH, published 1850, also by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Let's see, is there any other footnote that they touch on there? No. All right. That's all I have time for today. So until next time, we will read on C.S. Lewis.